So Ineisha again says, what can you say about those with the 7th and 11th house stelliums? So just to be clear, a stellium is a gathering of 3 or more planets in the same sign. It can also be in the same house, but it's in the same sign that basically intensifies that energy. So if you look at a chart, if it's got stelliums in, just find my notes again, sorry, in the 7th and 11th houses, so 7th house, 11th house. I'm a very visual thinker and I talk with my hands, by the way, if you haven't realised that already. So now I'm visualising the chart in front of me and we've got the 7th house here and the 11th house over here. And so these are people, this is a people person. Straight away, that's what it's going to tell me. It's a people person because we've got a concentration of planets, a concentration of parts of the self that are associated with in parts of the chart that are associated with other people. So the 7th house is just generally other people, but often specifically associated with one-to-one relationships. So the relationship with our partners and husbands, and also sort of our best friends and very close working relationships. Any very close relationship is shown by the 7th house, but it also can just be others. And then also the 11th house. The 11th house is society and groups and networks and friends. So if someone has a concentration of planets in the 7th house and the 11th house, then we can see that this person is a people person. They need to feel connected. It's really important for them to feel connected to other people, to have those kinds of relationships. But what that's going to mean and sort of how that might manifest for them is really going to depend on the nature of the planets that are involved. As a tip, it's always very good to look at the planet that is kind of the heavyweight of the stellium. So if you've got a stellium with, say, the Sun, Mercury, Venus and Saturn, all in one sign and in one house of your chart, then you're looking at Saturn first. Saturn is the one that is going to really dictate to the others how they need to respond and how they need to react. And so that Saturn influence is really going to be all pervading through both the Saturn conjunction to Mercury, Saturn conjunction to Venus and Saturn conjunction to the Sun. We're going to get a real Saturn vibe from that stellium. But stelliums are really, really interesting because it also means that one area of life, or sometimes 2 areas of life, in this case 2 if it's the 7th and 11th house. But I'm just kind of thinking of my own chart with, I've got this huge stellium of stuff going on, like loads of planets in the 9th house of my chart. So everything, it's like I have a one-track mind. It's completely... Everything is geared towards writing and visionary work, and the idea of traveling and so on. Everything is geared towards that. Not much else is going on anywhere else in the chart. And that can be how a person is when we have a stellium in the chart, that sort of these particular areas of life just constantly are in the forefront of our lives, and other parts of life tend to be more backgrounds because these stelliums sort of say this is what is important. And for you with 7th, 11th house, it's the need to connect, the need to belong, the need to feel as though you have a friendship, a relationship, someone to bounce ideas off, and this sense of community. The sense of community is really important, I imagine, with those particular stelliums. So the next question. Another one on the stelliums here. So Aida says, can you talk about stelliums in the 8th house? So the 8th house is also a house that is associated with other people. We talk about it being shared resources. It's also the house of intimacy and sex as well. So we could suggest that someone with a stellium here, once again, needs to have bonding, but this is like really deep and powerful bonding, like soul bonding with somebody. It also means that you're somebody, if it's your chart, that is really wanting to get underneath the stuff of life. This is a house that talks of taboos. It's the house that talks of mysteries. It's the house of deep complexes. Traditionally, it's the house of Pluto's underworld. You want to get underneath life. You want to find out the secret to life. You want to understand death, but you also want to understand life as well. You want to understand the meaning of what is behind all of this. And most of all, you want the truth. You want the truth about life. You want the truth of yourself. You want the truth from other people. God help anybody who you feel is not telling you the truth. That can be very, very difficult for someone with an 8th house stellium. You want the truth. I imagine you are somebody who is perhaps very good at sort of getting underneath, like polite conversation, getting to the reality of a person. Maybe you're somebody who's very good at handling money or handling other people's money. Sometimes people with an 8th house stellium can be really good at things like insurance and banking and that kind of thing. Maybe you're very good at keeping secrets. It is going to depend, though, on what planets are involved and what aspects they make in your chart. But because there is the 8th house here, the association with sort of mysteries and the occult, which is just another word for the unknown. Maybe you are very drawn to the world of the paranormal as well. You know, this kind of world, astrology, tarot, ghosts. Sometimes people with a strong 8th house perhaps are very perceptive to spirits. I find it more so with the 12th house, but sometimes I've seen it with the 8th house as well. So yeah, an 8th house stellium can be very, very interesting. The next question, Katy says, how do I get to use my Pluto conjunct midheaven and Jupiter conjunct Uranus now that I no longer work in the world per se? My Neptune conjunct ascendant wants to be of service, but when we get into our 60s, there tends to be a retreat from the world. So basically, Katy's talking about her natal chart and sort of saying that there are these very strong aspects in her chart that really sort of say, I want to be of service, I want to do something, and I want to change the world. That's Pluto on the midheaven in your natal chart. I want to change the world. I want to make a mark. I want to do something that makes an impression for the future. And so that can be a really powerful drive, especially with Neptune conjunct the ascendant. Yeah, Neptune conjunct the ascendant, because Neptune is also a very, very spiritual planet and very compassionate, and it's kind of like a very charitable planet as well, and really wants to just make the world a better place and take that world up to the next level. So the thing is, obviously, as we get older, we come to a point where we can't or don't want to work anymore and do the normal day-to-day job thing. And at some point, obviously, we do become too old to be able to do that. So I think it's considering how you can do small things that can still make an impact. And I think sometimes, especially if you have Pluto conjunct your midheaven, Pluto tends to go to extremes. Pluto is all or nothing. And so for you, it may feel like doing something small doesn't feel enough, especially with Neptune conjunct your ascendant, because Neptune feels like it's never enough, that there's always more to do. Neptune will just keep on giving and giving and giving and giving because it has no limits, and the soul is unlimited. So doing something small can feel, like I say, not enough, but it is enough. Sometimes a very small action, which is what you're able to do at this time, can be incredibly powerful, and it can be a catalyst. Remember that word. Pluto can be a catalyst. You can be a catalyst for what is going to come later down the line. And that it can be from, you know, how you spend your money, for example, the companies that you spend your money with, so who you choose to buy from. Thinking Pluto is connected with riches, for example, who you choose to bank with, all of these things. They are small choices that you make, but remember, Pluto is a planet that belongs to the collective. It's a social, it's a transpersonal, I should say. It's transpersonal, beyond personal planet. So it's not that you yourself have to just change all the world because you're feeling like that there are so many people that are lost and forgotten. Neptune conjunct your ascendant. You feel as though you see those who are lost and forgotten. And Pluto says, I want to do something. I want to dramatically change this world. But you are part of the rest of the world. And those small actions that you are taking, whatever that may be, whether it's, like I say, choosing where to place your power, what to buy, where to put your money, the actions that you take on a daily basis, what you do on a daily basis, all of those things can have a massive impact when you consider that maybe there's lots of other people who are also doing the same thing, and that is the catalyst for dramatic change that is later down the line. Okay, so on to the next question. Susana says, congratulations for your 10th year anniversary. Thank you, Susana. What do you think about Chiron square the nodes in the natal chart? So, as I was saying before, anything that is square to the nodes is considered to be a missed step. We need to resolve the problem or the difficulty that we have with the planet that is squaring the nodes, so that we can move forward, so that we can evolve, so we can get rid of this feeling of being stuck in the past sometimes with the south node. But also remember that the south node is not it's not all negative. We can take the best qualities of what the south node indicates and put that to the service of the north node to help us to move forwards. So we get a feeling with Chiron being square to the nodes in the natal chart that there is some kind of healing that needs to happen. Something needs to be healed in relation to bringing like parts of yourself together that sometimes maybe feel like they don't fit together. Remember, Chiron is half man, half horse, and yet he still functions even though he's not one thing or another. Sometimes we feel like an outsider with Chiron square to the nodes. We feel a bit like everybody else got this special book when they were born that tells them what they're supposed to be doing with their lives, and yet you're the one that didn't get the book. You don't understand it. It feels like you're separate from everyone else in some way, or you're very, very sensitive to being an outsider. You're scared of being an outsider, and perhaps that holds you back sometimes. Maybe there has been some kind of painful experience in the realm of life indicated by where Chiron is in your chart. So the house where Chiron is in your chart, that is going to show the area of life that maybe you struggle with, and yet where you also may be highly skilled in some way, because Chiron is also a mentor, a teacher. He was incredibly skilled. He has this shamanic quality to him. So there's a sort of magical side to Chiron, I think. I rather like Chiron. So it may feel painful at times to feel like an outsider, or to feel like you're missing something essential. But actually, the more you work on self-healing, the more you work on the idea of accepting that there are certain things that you can't heal fully. You know, sometimes we still suffer from scars, even if we've got over the original painful experience that we had. But some things can't be fully healed. And so the way we deal with that is going to be very important for how life unfolds. If we sort of sit in our suffering and just kind of go, oh, woe is me, everything's terrible, my life is awful, then we're going to stay very stuck. Whereas if we sort of go through this process of accepting that which cannot be healed, and then we can really take sort of aim our arrow, we can start to move forwards again by focusing on the things that we can change and that we do have some control over, and that we can also use the experience of suffering that we've had often to help other people as well. So it feels to me that someone with that kind of position, if you have Chiron square to your nodes in your natal chart, to me would indicate someone who has very strong healing abilities, but maybe doesn't know it. So I don't know if that's something that you connect with, but it may be something that is worth investigating. And also the other thing as well is that if you have a special skill, something that you can do and only you can do, maybe you've felt like you've struggled a lot to do that, but once you overcome that struggle, once you push forward, even though you're scared of being rejected, like Chiron was rejected when he was very young by his parents because of what he looked like, if you overcome that fear of being rejected, then that also will help to move you towards your soul's evolution as well. Alejandra says, what does Chiron over the midheaven mean in the natal chart? So another Chiron question. Chiron and the midheaven, I often find that this is present in the chart of people who are healers. So I was talking before about the square to the nodes being indicative of healing, but the midheaven, remember, is about where you're going in life, what you want to project out there into the world. And so it can be sort of linked with somebody who is perhaps working in medicine, you know, maybe they're a doctor or a nurse, or they are involved in veterinary work, or maybe they are a counselor or a shamanic healer, a Reiki healer, or they do this kind of work, or they're just a counselor, a therapist of some kind. You see that sometimes with Pluto conjunct the midheaven as well. But Chiron conjuncts the midheaven in the natal chart can also actually mean that maybe you also struggle with your career as well. Again, for similar reasons, because you feel like maybe you don't quite fit in. And maybe that is because part of yourself has been left to one side, that you've kind of rejected part of yourself because maybe you feel unacceptable in some way, and so you followed a more established path. Remember that Chiron has an orbit between Saturn and Uranus, so there's something of kind of moving from a very conservative traditional path, which is Saturn, through to something that is more alternative and progressive and innovative, which is Uranus. And so Chiron can represent that point where we get stuck with that, where we find it difficult to break away from the past and hard to move forward to something that is different and embracing our uniqueness and difference. So that kind of struggle may play out in your career. The other thing is, because this is an axis that's associated with parents as well, sometimes there can be some kind of wounding or problem that you've experienced with one of your parents, either mother or father. Astrologers continuously argue over whether the midheaven is the mother or midheaven is the father, and to be honest, I found it can switch. So either way, mother or father figure, sometimes there is some kind of pain that has been experienced in that relationship with that person that then significantly impacts upon what you decide to do with your life, and it may feel a very, very challenging question, deciding like, what do I do with my life, what do I do for a career. But Chiron says, you know, you have a skill, there is something that only you can do, and it would really bring you a lot of alleviation of pain to do that thing that you most want to do for your career, because Chiron, he is, like I say, he's highly skilled. Susan also wants to know about Chiron. I've been doing some research on Chiron, and I would appreciate any thoughts or ideas you have on the Chironic amongst us. I'm not entirely sure of your question, Susan. What I would say is that all of us have a Chiron in our charts. In other words, we all have a wound. We all have some kind of suffering. We all get hurt. We all have vulnerabilities. We all think we're different. We're all scared of being rejected. We all have pieces of ourselves that don't seem to fit together. And so I think this is the sort of looking at Chiron and getting to grips with our own Chiron can really help us heal as a society and kind of as a race, you know, the human race. And Lord knows we need some healing, especially at this time. And so, yeah, I think it's really important that you're working with your Chiron in your natal chart, because that puts you in touch with that part of you that has suffered and has gone through pain and so on. And the more we deal with our own pain, then the more we can flourish and like I say, sort of heal as a race. And I think that's really important. Cangül says, what is the effect of Jupiter conjunct Chiron in the 9th house in Pisces in the natal chart? Okay, what is the effect of Jupiter conjunct Chiron in the 9th house, Pisces in the natal chart? So, Cangül, I'm sorry if I've mispronounced your name. I'm not too sure of the pronunciation. Jupiter conjunct Chiron. So first of all, we have Jupiter in the 9th house for a start, is happy there. Jupiter traditionally rules the 9th house, so he functions very well in this part of the chart. So we've got someone here who has strong beliefs, someone here who perhaps is well travelled or is very aware of other cultures, who is willing to go beyond and go into unfamiliar lands to better themselves in some way, that wants to challenge themselves. And then Chiron, like I was saying before, we've got this mentor. He's the teacher, and this is a house that's associated with academic learning. You know, Chiron conjunct Jupiter in the 9th house makes me think of somebody who can have a very good academic career, or is somebody who is a perpetual student. But maybe you're someone who is studying some kind of alternative path, because Chiron can also represent that as well. And Pisces is a very spiritual sign. So I would imagine somebody with this particular placement is actually quite a visionary, maybe a very good storyteller as well. So I don't know if you have any interest in writing or literally storytelling. You know, sometimes actors can use this kind of placement as well. I'm just thinking that you have a story to tell, and this particular aspect would show that you have a great skill to do this. But of course, you are also having to believe in yourself, Jupiter, despite what you perceive to be your flaws or the things that where you feel vulnerable. So despite your suffering, despite your pain, despite where you feel as though you're not quite right in some way, because Chiron makes us all feel like that, Jupiter is kind of saying you have to believe in yourself despite the things that you've suffered in life, and despite the feeling of the fear of being rejected, and still tell your story and still go further and still travel into this world and broaden your horizons. So really interesting placement, and especially creative. So on to the next question. Neith says, what does it mean if someone has a planet at 0 degrees? So the very first thing that I think of with a 0 degree planet is that in this incarnation you have a clean slate as far as whatever it is that planet is symbolizing. So for example, if you have Venus at 0 degrees of whatever sign, then we can see that you're having a clean slate as far as perhaps relationships are concerned in this lifetime. You are going to be learning something completely new to you in this lifetime when it comes to relationships. And consequently, sometimes the 0 degrees can feel a little bit unstable because there's this uncertainty that goes with that, because you're on new territory, you're in new territory as far as, in this example, relationships are concerned. And so therefore, it's going to take some time to be able to learn to handle that energy effectively in this lifetime. Maybe that's part of the lifetime struggle, that you're starting to learn how to deal with this new energy symbolized by the sign that the planet is in, and how to handle that and how to carry it. So sometimes it can be a little bit unpredictable, or you're second guessing yourself, but overall, we get this idea of a clean slate, a new start in this lifetime, according to whichever planet is on this 0 degrees. Now, Neith also says, what is meant by having planets in the natal chart in the Galactic Centre? To be honest, I don't really know. I don't really use this in my natal chart work. I've occasionally used it when I'm talking about transits and so on, particularly when Saturn was transiting through Sagittarius, where the Galactic Centre is. But as far as natal work, I don't ever put the Galactic Centre onto the natal chart, so I feel like it's not a technique that I'm particularly familiar with. I would sort of say that maybe there is a real kind of spiritualization of the planet that is in connection with this point in the chart, because there is this feeling of that it's at the center of everything. Maybe that's the point as well. Maybe there is extra kind of gravity associated with something that is connected with the Galactic Centre, but I'm just really bouncing off sort of the symbolic ideas of it rather than talking from experience of using it. So that's one that I'm not really going to be able to give a full answer on. Susana says, what's your interpretation of someone with lots of planets conjunct the South Node natally? So like I was saying before with the South Node, and sort of saying that anything that is on the South Node, we can use that energy to its best to help us with the path of the North Node, with the mission of the North Node. If you have lots of planets around the South Node, it would make me feel as though you have a great deal of experiences, connections, maybe problems, difficulties that you've carried over from the past. Also as well, maybe you just set yourself as a soul, you set yourself a big mission in this lifetime to deal with all of this karmic heritage as far as these particular planets are concerned. And so maybe you just thought, I'm just going to deal with this all in one go, and I'm just going to put this here on my chart and let's get it all done in this lifetime. So sometimes when someone has a lot of activity around the South Node, I really feel as though they have decided that they are going to complete a huge amount of lessons in one lifetime. And that can sometimes put some pressure on us, you know. So that's one thing, but also that this person is highly skilled, that they have brought over all of this experience that the planets represent. And so they have a huge amount of experience and innate talent and potential to call upon as far as sort of living this incarnation is concerned. So they can be very gifted as well with having a lot of planets around the South Node. The next question is, I've just lost my place on here. Here we go. Polliana says, I'm currently reading about the inner planets. I'm intrigued in the placement of Venus in the birth chart. Knowing this planet as the female element as well as the moon, I believe to be quite important in the growth of females' journey. Recognizing that men have this placement too, is there an equivalent planet for them on their journey, i.e. an opposite? Okay, so Pollianna's talking about how Venus and the moon can represent sort of the divine feminine energies. And yes, there is an equivalent. It's Mars. Mars is for the divine masculine, also the sun as well. So the sun and Mars, the divine masculine, and the moon and Venus, the divine feminine. And just to kind of stress that this is not so much about men and women, it is about the sort of masculine and feminine within all of us, whatever we sort of determine ourselves to be, sort of on a physical level, or our gender, you know, all of that. It's just purely about the divine feminine and the divine masculine. So divine feminine is Venus and the moon, and divine masculine is the sun and Mars. Zita says, what does it mean to have almost all of my planets on the left side of my chart? So the left side, as you're looking at it, I always get left and right sort of mixed up. Okay, so left side, so this side is going to be the eastern side of the chart. So this is the 10th, 11th, 12th, and the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd houses. So if you're on that side of the chart, if most of your planets are on that side of the chart, then this is an incarnation which is very much focused on yourself, on your personal development in this lifetime. It tends to mean that you're somebody who is quite self-directed, that you're somebody who takes the initiative. If there's quite a lot of planets on the upper side of the chart, so in the 10th, 11th, 12th houses, then it might mean that you're somebody who is also very engaged with society, and that you want to do something helpful for society. You want to make a contribution to the world. Maybe you're very charitable, or you're a humanitarian, but you are somebody that is very self-directing, as I say. So you're not relying on other people. You want to be connected to others, but you're not relying on other people. So yeah, very independent. It's a signature of independence with having lots of planets on the left hand side. Anne says, my question is about the nodes and how they affect us, maybe a transit with Venus or the ascendant. Do you feel like they are important? And she also said, like this year it is in Leo, so talking about the North Node in Leo. So we are all on our thrones, or having love in our hearts. That's a really lovely way of putting it on. So yes, I do think the nodes are very, very, very important. But then I'm the kind of astrologer that because I am sort of always looking at the evolution of the soul, for want of a better term, I guess I class myself as an evolutionary astrologer, because I'm always looking at how we are evolving with our charts and sort of beyond our charts and so on, and using the best of the charts. And I feel like the movement of the nodes is very, very important, as is the placement of the nodes in the natal chart. The transits of the nodes can sometimes be incredibly overt and bring us to these powerful shifts in our lifetimes. Especially when they cross over the ascendant. I have noticed that sometimes the crossing over the ascendant, whether it's the South Node or the North Node, can feel like a life and death kind of decision. It doesn't mean literally. I've literally just had this myself. So I'm still here. I didn't die, and I didn't have a life or death kind of experience physically. But inside of myself, it felt like there was a real struggle to sort of catapult myself onto this path that is, yes, I'm here, I'm going to do this, I'm going to live, I'm going to move forwards, I'm going to celebrate who I am, I'm going to be confident with who I am. That's the Leo side of things, which is actually very difficult for me. So that's where we have this kind of life or death sort of feeling. So the transits of the nodes can be incredibly important for drawing us back onto the path that we wanted to be on, that we were meant to be on, for want of probably a better term. I think the transits of the nodes can often reorientate us onto a path that feels in alignment with our soul and with our hearts. So yes, I do think that the nodes are very, very important as far as transits are concerned.